Basically today we're going to be learning how to make this beautiful chiffon gown with this Caribbean style at the bottom. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, give this video a thumbs up. Thank you. To make this dress, I made use of this beautiful chiffon fabric which measures 2 yards and 9 inches, while for the lining, this is 2 yards of Aba lining. I folded my fabric into 4, and then the back piece is 2 inches wider than the front piece. So we're cutting the back and the front at the same time. My half gown length is 15 inches plus half inches, 15.5 inches. So I'm going to mark it out this way. For my shoulder, the measurement is 14 inches divided by 2 is 7 inches plus half inches for seam, 7.5 inches is what I have here. Then I came down by half inch shoulder slope. From that point, I'll take my armhole which is 7.5 inches, and then I'm basically going to connect it this way. My bust measurement is 38 inches divided by 4 is 9.5 inches plus 2 inches seam allowance, 11.5 inches. I marked it out. My waist measurement is 34 inches divided by 4 is 8.5 inches plus 1 inches for that plus 2 inches seam allowance. We have 11 inches. So I'm going to connect it this way. And then from this my half length, I'm going to go up by half inches, and then I'll connect it towards the center. So I basically love doing this because I don't want that side poking out like somehow longer. Okay, let's continue. For my neckline, I use a neck width of 4 inches, and then for my back neck depth, I used 1 inches neck depth for the back. So I'm going to connect it this way. For my front neck depth, I took 4.5 inches, and then I'm still going to connect it this way. So I'll connect this to my shoulder slope, and then I'll connect my armhole curve. Now for us to work on our front armhole curve, this is our back armhole curve, right? Now for our front armhole curve, I'm going to get the midpoint of my armhole line, which is 3.25 inches. Then from that point, I'm going to take in half inches, and then I'm basically going to curve it in, and then this is my front armhole. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is to work on the back. So for this back, I'm going to go up by 1.5 inches. Now you can use 1 inches, but for me 1.5 is perfect, and then you'll see the outcome at the end of this video. Okay, I think we should go ahead and cut out what we have initially first of all, then before I can fully work on my back bodice. So after cutting this out, I'm going to take out my front bodice. And then this is our back bodice, right? Okay, remember we came up by 1.5 inches. Then from this side, I'm going to come out by half inches. Then from my neckline, I'll measure 9 inches, and then I'll connect this line to that 9 inches line, and then I'm going to slant this other line, and then we cut. The whole essence of this is to avoid bulge at that back. So now we're going to mark out our new zip allowance, which is 2 inches, and then I notched it here. Because of that alteration, our zip allowance changed, right? From that point, I'll take our nipple to nipple, which is 4 inches. Then I marked 9 inches here, and then I'll connect this line. I'll take half inches on both sides, and then we connect. So basically, I'm just marking it out here. I'll be transferring this thing on the lining piece also. So we'll hold our dart and sew when it's time for us to do so. So now I'm bringing my front bodies, and then I'm going to cut out the front neckline and the armhole. Okay. For the dart, my nipple to nipple measurement is 7 inches divided by 4 is 3.5, so I added half inch, which gave me 4 inches. Then I came up here by 4.5 inches. Then I will mark out ½ inches on both sides, and then we connect it so as going to hold it when it's time. So I've transferred my cutting to the lining piece. So I've basically cut out the lining for both the front and the back. So I'm going to open up my front bodice this way, and then I'll place my lining on it. Then I'll go ahead and sew up the neck and the sides. So I'll do same for my back bodice. I'm going to place my back bodice, this is the front facing me, and then I'll place my lining piece on it. So we go ahead and sew up the neckline, the zipper side, and then the side. So I'll do so for the second piece also. So the next is for us to keep it aside and work on our down part. Now my gown length is 40 inches, right? Remember our half length was 15 inches. So I'll place this tape from 15 inches. And then I'm going to be marking out 33 inches plus 1 inches for seam allowance, 34 inches. Okay, then for the width of this fabric, remember I told you we used 2 yards and 9 inches. So by the time I measured, what I had here was 80 inches in total. So that's what we have here. And then we're going to go ahead and run our gather stitch on it. So to make up for our gown length, I went ahead to cut this ruffle piece. The length of this ruffle piece is 8 inches plus 1 inch seam allowance, 9 inches. So the width is 80 inches, and then I have 2 pieces of this. So I want to be joining it together to form a longer piece. So I'm going to take it to my sewing machine. I'll join it here and sew. Then after doing that, I'm going to take this piece to the weaving machine. I'm going to be weaving the edges, these 2 edges. Then I'll run a gather stitch on one side. So my total gown length is 40 inches plus 1 inch seam allowance, 41 inches. So I'm going to deduct 2 inches from that, which gives me 39 inches, and that is what we have for this lining piece. And this is 2 yards, that's the width. So I'll go ahead and run a gather stitch on it. Okay, now this is my upper bodice. I already turned it out using the lining piece, so let me turn it over. This is basically what we have. So this is our back bodice, and then this is my front bodice. So the next thing I'll do is to go ahead and take in my darts. I'll sew in my darts. I already marked it out. So I'll sew it this way, both front and the back. And then this is what we have after sewing in our darts. So the next thing I'm going to do is to bring in my front bodice, and then I'll place my back bodice on it, and then it's time for us to join our shoulder. So to do this, I'm going to pick up my shoulder line like this, and then I'll take my lining and then I'll match it to the other lining, my front lining to back lining, my front bodice to back bodice, and then I'll go ahead and sew it up like this. I'll just sew a straight line, and then we are done. This is what we have. We are done joining our shoulders together. So the next thing we're going to do is to go ahead and cut in our sleeves. So for my sleeve, I'll just be doing it like freehand method. Okay, my sleeve length is 9 inches plus 1 inch allowance, 10 inches. So I'm going to be marking it out this way. Then from the upper side, I'm going to come down by 4.5 inches. You can also use 5 inches. Basically this is freehand I'm doing here, right? Okay, then my round sleeve is 13 inches divided by 2, 6.5 inches plus 1 inch, 7.5 inches. Then for this place, I have 7 inches plus 1 inch, 8 inches. So I'm going to connect it this way, and then I'm going to curve in these parts, and then I'll go ahead and cut. So this is what we have, and then I'm going to open it up, and you can see we have 2 pieces for our sleeves. So I'll go ahead and fold it and then sew the hem of our sleeve. Then after doing that, I'll fold it like this into 2 and then join those sides, and that's what we'll be fixing on our main bodice. So before I fix it on my main bodice, I have to close up my sides. So I'm going to mark out what I have here. My chest line divided by 4 is 9.5 inches. My waistline divided by 4 is 8.5 inches. So I'm basically going to mark it out, and then I'll take it to the sewing machine and then sew it up. So after sewing it, I'll then fix in my sleeve. Okay, now for the down part, this is what I have. I already ran my gather stitch, and you can see it looking so beautiful already, right? So I'm going to be attaching this to our upper bodice. So this is my upper bodice. I already fixed in my sleeve, I joined my side and all that. So I'm going to turn it over this way, and then I'm going to place my gathered piece on it like this. I'm going to make sure that the gathers are spread out evenly, and I'll place it this way, and then I will sew. So after sewing it, I'll bring in my ruffled parts. So you can see this is the piece we're going to be using for the ruffles, and you can see I already joined it to form a longer piece. Then I also went ahead to serge the 2 sides. You can see it. So the next thing I'll do is to go ahead and run a gather stitch on one side of it. So I already did that, and then this is what we have. So I'm going to try to spread out my gathers evenly, and then I'm going to bring the upper side. So this is the first gathers we already sewed. You can see how it's looking. So I'm going to turn it over this way, and then mind you, you are supposed to serge the tip of this one. You can see I already serged it so that it won't frill, and we are going to be placing this one on top of it. So I'm going to bring in this my ruffles gather. I'll spread it out evenly, and then after spreading it out, I'm going to place it like this on top of the previous one, and then we'll just sew on it like this, just sew on it like that. And then this is what we have. I already sewed on it, and this is what we have. So the next thing I'll do is to introduce my lining piece, and then this is my lining piece. I already ran my gathers, so I'm going to place it on the main bodice like this. So it's going to be on the upper side, just like you can see me doing. I'll place it this way, and then we go ahead and sew. So I'll sew up that waistline, and then I'll also join it by the side. So this is it. I already sewed up the waistline, and then I went ahead to join it by the side. Like, it was getting late already. I had to quickly finish up this tutorial. So let me turn it over so that you see what it looks like. So this is what we have. I already turned it out. So I'll go ahead and give this place a very good press. Like, when you are working with chiffon fabric, it's good for you to always iron. I feel it has a way of like helping you keep your fabric in check. So I'm going to place our 2 sides together like this. So the zipper I'm using is 24 inches. So I'm going to measure from here to about 22 inches, and then from that point I'm going to close it up, and then I'll go ahead and fix in my zip. So you can see our dress looking so beautiful. Did you see how the back piece laps so well, like no bulge at the back? If you enjoyed this tutorial, why not give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.